We're calling to order the Town of Corte Madera Planning Commission for Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Metcalf?
Here.
Commissioner Bundy?
Here.
Commissioner Chase?
Here.
Commissioner Friedman?
Here.
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
All right, well, thank you. We're all present and accounted for. So, as always, the first thing on our agenda is a public comment for anything that is not on the agenda later in the night. So if you've got something you want to say that's not on tonight's agenda, you may step up to the microphone. You have 3 minutes and say what you'd like to say.
We were just, Peggy Burnett.
Would you please identify yourself?
Peggy Burnett.
Okay.
All right, 14 Laurel Drive, Corte Madera. I was wondering, how about having an online calendar which shows all of the civic events planned? I think that tonight a number of people are going to the meeting about the TAM High School bond issue, and that may be why attendance is kind of small here tonight.
Okay, thank you. There is an online calendar, but thank you.
Well, there's one of our meetings, but not of all of them.
Ah, gotcha.
So that you can see.
Conflicts. All right. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to comment?
Lucinda Smith. I just want to add to what Peggy was saying is not only does it be an online calendar, but make the various groups within the town coordinate so we don't have one meeting going on at the same time another meeting is going on because they're independent entities. So not just online and available to us as the public, but also so that it can be coordinated within the various units within the town.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, then we'll close this public comment open time, and we'll head directly to what we are here tonight to do. This is a new hearing, specifically stated as the Village at Corte Madera Restoration Hardware Expansion Project Draft Environmental Impact Report. This is a public hearing to receive comments from the public regarding this draft environmental impact report for the Village at Corte Madera Expansion Project. So it's going to go to Mr. Boyle here, but this is just about the DEIR. It is not about design of that. That'll all come later. But Phil will explain what comes later in his schedule or his agenda there. You can see it comes later. So, Mr. Boyle, please.
Thank you, Chairman Chase, members of the Commission. Yes, the item before you tonight is the Village at Corte Madera Expansion Project Draft Environmental Impact Report. And I'd like to start out by introducing our consulting team. Bless you. Introducing our consultants. To my left is Christine Gaspar with GHD. And behind me is Pat Collins, also with GHD. They and their consulting team are the authors of this document. They were hired by the town, and they were chosen by the town. So Christine and I will both be doing the presentation. So just brief project description. Again, this is a retail store and cafe, approximately 26,000 square feet. It will have 2 levels plus a rooftop courtyard with a maximum height of 46 feet. The second part of the project is the paving of the gravel lot, and the paving and landscaping and illuminating of the gravel lot, and creating approximately 455 parking spaces. I think that should be exactly 455 parking spaces. But parking has been an issue and probably will continue to be an issue, and just wanted to make it really clear. Here is the parking situation. Currently, there are 1,773 parking spaces, both in the village lot and the gravel lot. When the new building is put down and other parking lot improvements take place, they're realigning some of the spaces, that will result in a net decrease of 166 parking spaces. The creation, or the revised, so that makes the revised main lot have 1,607 parking spaces. The new gravel lot, becoming a paved lot, will create 455 spaces for a total of 2,062 spaces. So approximately, I think I said that was 180 some additional parking spaces. So that is the parking situation. There's an overview of the project. Most of you probably know. The building is proposed to be in the center of the parking lot, the western edge of the parking lot, right in front of the gap in what was previously Banana Republic. The gravel lot is the upper left there of the screen. This is a west elevation of the proposed building. West elevation, the picture is looking east, of course. This is, again, another shot of the west elevation on top, and below is the east elevation. And this is the northern and southern elevations, or the side elevations of the proposed building. The gravel lot itself will be paved and landscaped, and bioretention facilities will be created. This is rather light, but in the middle, it's not really showing all the delineations of all the parking spaces, but again, 455 parking spaces being created, buffer around the edge being retained, and again, the bioretention areas on the lower right and lower left. And in terms of the various entitlements that this application includes, they're requesting a conditional use permit for the cafe in the building. They're requesting a sign permit. There's a minor lot line adjustment that needs to happen. And preliminary and precise plans will be amended, and that will include the design review process. As mentioned before, and the gravel lot will need to be have a general plan amendment from marshlands and wetlands to regional shopping. And the gravel lot will also need to be rezoned from parks and open space and habitat to also commercial regional shopping. There's also a development agreement that will take place between the town and the applicants. Now I will pass it over to Christine, and she's going to give you some fundamentals of EIRs as well as the EIR process that we have gone through.
Good evening, Commissioners. So just some brief fundamentals of EIRs. So it's meant to be an informational document. It's been prepared to satisfy the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. Its purpose is to provide the public and decision makers with information about the project's potential effects on the environment. There's also mitigation measures in here to reduce significant impacts. And lastly, it's to provide project alternatives. You're required to look at alternatives to the project in an EIR. So this started August of 2015. The applicant submitted an application to the town. Over the summer, the town proceeded to go through the process of selecting a consultant to do the environmental work, and GHD was selected in October of that year. And we kicked off the EIR process with a notice of preparation, which was issued in October of 2016. And a public scoping meeting was held here at Town Hall in November. There were a handful of folks who came to the meeting and spoke. I think there's more information about that in Phil's staff report. The scoping period ended later that month in November. And then the draft EIR, we then went off and diligently worked for many months, and the draft EIR was published on July 12th. The town made it available here at the planning department on the website. There was a notice of availability posted with the county clerk. It was mailed to interested parties, and it was also placed in the Marin IJ. And then the draft EIR was also sent to the state clearinghouse, and they posted it on July 11th. So the EIR identifies environmental impacts in these various categories that you see listed up here. All of the impacts have been reduced to less than significant with the incorporation of mitigation. A lot of them are simply related to the project complying with regulations or the code or general plan policies, but then there are some that are specific to the project and the site, and that includes aesthetics and biology, greenhouse gases, and transportation and traffic. And there's no significant unavoidable impacts. All of the impacts identified have been reduced to less than significant with the incorporation of mitigation. I'm going to bore you for a moment with the CEQA guidelines. It talks about the standards of adequacy. I know it's a mouthful, but so what the CEQA guidelines tell us is that your EIR needs to have a sufficient degree of analysis to provide you with the information that you need to make a decision on the environmental consequences of the project that's before you. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be exhaustive, but it should reflect adequacy, completeness, and a good faith effort at full disclosure of what's happening with the project.
And I think that's back to me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate that. Overview of the secret process and the document itself. In terms of participation, again, the intent of this meeting is to discuss the document and to get comments from the public regarding this document. This document, as Christine mentioned, the public review period started in July and will end on Friday, August 25th at 5 p.m. Comments tonight that are verbal will be recorded, and they will be responded to in the final environmental impact report. And also in the back, I have a sign-up sheet as well as a pad and writing utensils if someone wants to write a comment and submit it to us. That's certainly a possibility. Comments can also come, obviously, via email or via regular mail to the Town of Corte Madera Planning Department. Encourage everybody to stay informed. Again, sign-up sheet in the back. And encourage everybody to attend additional meetings. There will be additional meetings on the environmental impact report and the project itself, and those will be before the Planning Commission and then eventually before the Town Council. Again, repeating a little bit, next steps, comment period ends the 25th. The final EIR is anticipated to be available in the fall, in several months from now, 2017. Public hearings before the Planning Commission are anticipated to take place November of this year. And hearing on certification of the EIR and consideration of the project is anticipated to happen the end of this year, early next year. And let me just check to see if I had any other thing. Adam, I see you've got your finger on the button.
I just think it's worth reiterating again that this meeting is really for the purpose of receiving public comments. Staff is not going to be responding to comments that are made this evening. Rather, again, that is those comments are responded to in the final environmental impact report. And so I just wanted to, I think it can't be stated enough, just so everyone's on the same page in terms of expectations for this evening. We are in the formal comment period. The comment period again will run until the 25th, and the comments that are that are written by email, we accept them by email, by letter, et cetera, they will all be responded to in the final environmental impact report as well. So again, this is sort of an additional opportunity to be here in person, listen to a little bit of the presentation by Christine about what the EIR is for. Hopefully that's helpful, a little bit of the project description, but really the bulk of the meeting is to receive any comments on the document itself this evening.
Got it. So you guys are going to go ahead and then present this piece by piece, or how much?
No, that's pretty much for our staff report. I did want to point out that the staff report that I did write, I go into quite a bit about the public involvement and the scoping process that the applicant has gone through to reach out to the community. Again, a kind of overview of California Environmental Quality Act, and then I outline the next steps. That is the extent of the staff report that we had prepared for you this evening. And we're welcome to hear your comments, as well as the public's.
Public comments, yes. So that's what we're all here to listen to. So we don't have any, we're not going to ask any questions of you guys right now unless somebody has something that's pertinent to this. Yes, Bob?
Process.
Phil or Christine, on page 2.2, it talks about the status of the gravel lot, which is, when fully occupied, can accommodate up to 445 vehicles. And the new improved lot says will accommodate 455.
Right.
So that seems to be a discrepancy as to the number of additional parking spots that are added.
Well, part of one of the goals of the project is to utilize that space more efficiently. And so providing, by lining up the cars and requiring them to park in certain spaces, you're able to put more spaces on that lot. Am I getting your question correct?
10 more, is that correct?
Yes. And again, I think the number of parking spaces that exist today is not an exact science because it's gravel and they do stripe it somewhat during the holidays. But that's not nearly as exact, the number of spaces today, as compared to the exact that we can get off of the plan for the proposed parking.
Okay.
All right. Phyllis, you have a question about the process or
Following up
something?
on
Okay.
Bob's, the report says there'll be 445 in the gravel lot, and you're saying 455. I think Bob was asking, and I also asked, how did we get 10 more spaces than in the report?
Well,
You can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but I think on page 2-2, the 445 that is being referenced, that came about, we looked back at aerial photos of the site and kind of guesstimated how much you could squeeze in during the holiday period. And so that is kind of a standalone number, so it's the informal cars that you can squeeze in onto the gravel lot. When Phil talks about his numbers, he's talking about the formalized parking spaces that you're losing and gaining that are, actual striped parking spaces.
So what you're saying is that, Phyllis, the full paragraph reads that that's what they estimate is there now versus the 455 that the new lot creates.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So with that said, let's move right into hearing what people have read and want to say about the parking lot. So we'll open up the public comment section of this. I'd like to say you have 3 minutes. You state your name, and we're all taking notes, and there'll be official notes, as they say. So let's barge in. If you would stand up behind the podium over there, make sure the microphone is on, and I don't see anybody jumping up right here right now, but that would mean this would be a very short meeting. So,
That would be nice for a change.
Michael, well, you're entitled. That's all right.
Michael Harlock, 533 Redwood Avenue. It's very hard, and I know from a lot of experience, to differentiate between comments about the project and adequacy of the EIR. So these are going to blend together. But I've looked at this, several months ago and many times, and I have the site plan in front of me. My primary comments would be actually that the EIR may be deficient in not stating enough of the positive in terms of aesthetics. This, to me, is higher class than the village in general, which is no fault of the village. It's just mostly dated, except for Nordstrom and Sephora. In terms of the site plan, I only have 3 minutes, so I've made this comment to Rob, who represented Restoration. There he is. Hi. Before, and it looks, if I have the current plan, I'll just make this general comment that I think it would be interesting if the town and fire could kind of have some negotiation. What you have is a very inefficient parking layout right around the building, single loaded, in one case, a service corridor with no parking loaded. So an observation that I've made to Rob and others is that if the building were longer, that's one thing, and I think you could avoid losing maybe 50 parking spaces in the middle, and therefore not need to replace so many on the edge, and maybe the landscape easement around the north lot would get wider, which I think is, maybe there's even, I don't know if anybody talks about a path around the parking lot, but, it's a pretty skinny landscape strip along the north lot. Anyways, I know from talking to Restoration that there's a lot of pushback from fire. They feel like they need to be right up against the building. But if you look at the site plan, it's all single-loaded parking around it. And I just wonder if they need, do they need to be right up against it, or could they be 19 feet further away and still provide adequate fire protection to this building? So in my last 15 seconds, I think architecturally this is, outstanding. I think it's also, I was going to say, it'd be interesting to look at the site plan in the sense that this is a positive because it breaks up. It actually creates outdoor rooms of parking on either side of it. And I think from planning shopping centers, which I've done, that's a positive, actually. You're creating outdoor rooms. You're separating. You're breaking up what's an immense monolithic parking lot. I think that's an aesthetic advantage.
Thank you, Michael. Next, who's going to hobble up? Anybody? So.
Lucinda Smith, Corte Madera. I remember when the Han Center, which is now called the Village, was put before council, planning commissions, et cetera. We went through that whole process. And it got passed, and if my numbers are anywhere near correct, I think there was something like 1 million square feet that was going to be allowed for the buildings. That was challenged by the public. 3 council members were recalled because of their approval of this huge development. 3 new council members were elected. Those council members were more appreciative of not having a huge monstrosity or a huge development, let's put it that way, out there. And it went from 1 million square feet down to 600,000 square feet. And I don't know if those numbers are correct, but I challenge staff to go back and look at what the numbers were in the original approval of the development, and to come forth and allow all of the minutes to be incorporated in their report back as to what was approved. Now then, let's add on the additional square footage that Nordstrom's was allowed to incorporate in their building. And now you've got a step forward of more square footage. Now then, we want to put the Restoration Hardware building in there, which I think, quite frankly, is questionable. It may be a nice upgrade for the, I think you called it an older development in the shopping center, but it calls for a lot of restructuring of the gravel parking lot, which has kind of been taken over from the marsh to incorporate the additional needs of parking. Now, why Restoration has to move from where they are, I don't know. I don't pretend to understand. But perhaps elaborating and expanding that area would be better than moving into this area and causing this development to have yet increased square footage, which I don't believe was approved of at the get-go. Jonna Hale can give you a lot of history on this because she was involved. My husband and I were there, and I'm sure there are a few of us older folks that could illuminate some of the developments that went on back there and what was approved and what we expected the town to continue to adhere to. It's slowly got this creep. It's just building creep, and it's got to be stopped. We missed it all on this ridge development, these apartments down here. We missed it. We blew it as a town. But I think we need to stand up and we need to understand what we want to have in this town and what we want it to look like. Thank you.
Lucinda. Yes. If there's anyone else that would like to speak, show of hands, who else, you're free to get in line so we can move through this, please.
She moves better in crutches than I do in just 2 feet.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Gaffney. I'm with the San Francisco Bay Trail Project. And the San Francisco Bay Trail is a planned 500-mile trail around the entire San Francisco Bay, running through all 9 Bay Area counties and 47 cities. The 354 miles are currently in place and in use today. And the goal of the Bay Trail is a Class 1 multi-use pathway as close to the shoreline as possible. And the Bay Trail works best when it's uninterrupted by vehicle crossings, as you can imagine. And we like to say that we aim to serve users from age 8 to 80. So, would you send your 8-year-old out onto this path, or, would you send your 80-year-old out onto this path? So there are real and tangible impacts to the safety of Bay Trail users by the introduction of so many more vehicles crossing the pathway. And while of lesser concern, shoppers traversing between the parking lot and the mall on foot are also crossing the trail, leading to potential conflicts between cyclists and pedestrians. To change the zoning on the gravel lot from wetlands and marshlands to mixed-use region serving commercial, and from parks and open space and natural habitat district to a regional shopping district seems like it might open the door to additional potential conflicts in the future when actual mall expansion in the form of buildings may be proposed on the gravel lot. I don't know. Should the change in zoning and the paving of the gravel lot move forward, and given the impacts to the safety of users, the Bay Trail project is not sure that it should, the proponent should consider rerouting the trail outboard of the new parking, but within the bounds of the existing gravel lot. This will eliminate the turning conflicts from Redwood Highway and the main village parking lot. Since the proposed project removes 166 spaces in the main lot and builds 455 in the gravel lot, there's clearly room to reduce those spaces in favor of a generous pathway with plenty of landscaped buffer from the marsh's edge. Low and attractive fencing to prevent dogs from entering the sensitive marsh area could also be included. And now I actually have some comments from Maureen Gaffney, resident of Larkspur. So these are just my own personal comments. I'm a shopper here. I ride in this area a lot. The Bay Edge is a very special and scarce resource, and in today's world when voters have just voluntarily taxed themselves via Measure AA to rehabilitate wetlands around the region, the project before us that we should be talking about is the Gravel Lot Wetlands Restoration Project, and not one further paving the bay. And it's not like the project is for a greater good. Nothing here is going to address Marin's housing needs, help the poor, or feed the hungry. We're proposing a move in precisely the wrong environmental direction for more shopping. I'm just not sure that that's the wisest and best use of our scarce Bay Edge resources. And changing the zoning from wetlands, marshlands, parks, and open space to a regional shopping district, is this not a slippery slope into the development of the gravel lot into actual buildings? And once the zoning is changed and it's already paved over, well, then what's the big deal? Why not just add a In-N-Out burger? Think of the views. So those last ones are my personal comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fall down in front of the entire planning commission.
Patty Stolier, Casa Buena Drive, and age-friendly Corte Madera representative. I wish I could just put my finger on that gorgeous building and move it about 6 inches so that it would be at the other side and the parking would be available for the people with bad knees and bad hips and the older citizens that need close-in parking. So I love the whole concept of having the rooftop deck, and I love having the beauty of the building. I just wish it wasn't stealing those good parking places. So that's the only thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Hi, Phyllis Galanis, East Side, Corte Madera. I really am closer to the speaker before Patty, because I think that making 455 spaces on the gravel lot sounds like one, door dinging kinds of spaces, because they're going to be closer together. The other is, I agree with Patty on the moving parking places way out, whether you're going to run a shuttle or whatever you're going to do. You're displacing people for a standalone building that just says, look at me. It's going to block part of our view of Mount Tam. I've already been through that. And I think you're putting more light pollution out, and we're already having a problem with that, with wildlife and with people. I'd like to see us go more towards restoring the night sky so we can see constellations again. I can't even see the Big Dipper like I used to be able to when my husband and I bought our house. So I don't like this idea, but you've known that before. I know Stan likes the idea of another building, thinking it'll bring more people. I don't know that another iteration of a furniture store that's been here for a while is going to do that, and you're adding another furniture store over on Tamil Vista when you okay Scandinavian designs. Another building that's going to block more views of Mount Tam that we get as we're driving down the freeway. Yes, we can glance as we're still driving and not hitting anyone. I think you don't understand that the preciousness of Corte Madera has been the fact we've had low buildings, and the earlier commissions knew that, and they put a 2-story limit on buildings. That was changed, but there was a reason for that, because you could see the natural beauty over them. Now you're putting in higher buildings and saying, oh goody, it'll have a roof garden. All you have to do is go inside the building, go up an elevator or escalator, to see it, when right now you can see it as you walk by on the path that is by the slough that does get you, when you go out into the marshlands over to the bay. I do disagree with this project.
Thank you, Phyllis. Who else is game to make a comment tonight?
Peggy Burnett, 14 Laurel Drive. As we all know, the malls are not doing very well. And what I fear about this project is that we could allow a customized building to go in, a very large one, which should something happen to Restoration Hardware and they couldn't stay in their building, I think would be very difficult to repurpose. And so that's one reason I oppose this. I don't like the idea of changing the parking lot zoning because I think many of us came to Corte Madera because we appreciate the wetlands. And to me, this is one more encroachment on the wetlands. Also, I think for any project that is undertaken in Corte Madera, it would be very helpful to the public if we could see either a visual demonstration in terms of Photoshop overlays or a video of what the building is going to look like next to its neighbors and how much territory it's going to take up. I think this was one of the problems with WinCup, and we need to have either a model or some kind of a visual demonstration. Just giving us dimensions of the heights of the building is not sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. All right, so unless I see somebody jumping up and down here, we're going to have a very short public comment section on this tonight. So anyone else, please? No? So we will then close this public comment section. Phil, would you guys like to address any of those at the moment or anything, those comments?
Well, the format of this hearing is to take in these comments, and then all these comments will be responded to in writing in the final environmental impact report. So that is our.
I don't think I'm stretching the bounds of our purview here to Peggy. There are drawings of the building in situ. They're in the EIR. They are available online. So there are drawings that show it in place, so you can see it. So I'm sorry. I'm answering, and I'm not going to get into a dialogue. I shouldn't say that's why we don't do it, and I shouldn't. So I'm sorry. It's not a dialogue. It's available. Anyway, never mind. All right. So, Dr. Wolf.
Doctor.
So,
I really don't have
Yeah.
anything to add. I think this is a normal process and procedure. I mean, we will likely get a lot of comments in written form. Usually they come toward the very end of the process where they will flood in. And, even though we may not have gotten a whole, hundreds of people commenting this evening, I think it's still valuable. There may be many people watching this on video at the moment. So, but I think the process will continue. So I wouldn't take it as a sign of that folks aren't interested in the DIR.
Not to worry.
There's plenty of opportunities in different forms to actually make the comments, and I think we'll see many more in the coming weeks.
So in the general schedule, I heard you guys say November is one step, and then back to, after the first of the year, you anticipate the full set of project plans to be brought back before us. Is that right? Something like
Correct.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So in the meantime, this will just, for another 17 days or so, this will sit in the public comment purview, and then you guys will go to work with all of that.
Yeah, and staff is always, as we said, we have the document in the planning department. Staff is available to answer questions about the application or the materials. We have not only the DEIR, but the application materials at downstairs.
Website.
There's a bunch of information on our website. So we're, in the meantime, it's not like staff isn't available for public to come in and talk to us about information in the project. So I encourage folks to do that.
Yeah, please, come see Adam and Phil. I welcome you with open arms. So, I don't know what else we will do to address this agenda item tonight then, since we've heard everybody in the room that wants to say something, and you guys have made your presentation. I have read this. It's a weighty document, so there's a lot of really great information. I would commend you guys on a fabulous DER, very thorough. So I think it addresses a lot of issues. So with that said, then we will close this agenda item and we will move on. So those of you who want to go home now, we're going to go on to our other business. So we'll give a 5-minute break while the Restoration Hardware people can all evacuate.
Okay.
We're going to go back on the record here.
Complained about having fewer Montana people. How's the view? And two.
Okay,
Piece of record.
kids. So,
Just so negative.
I don't know that, we're done. We're not going to talk about this project anymore tonight. So, but we do have commissioner reports from the town council meeting or anything else the commissioners want to report on. That would be you, Bob?
Yes. The town council meeting, 8/1/17, the things of interest to us, I think, were the Corte Madera property, that it's now in the black from the standpoint that it's generating more income coming in than going out, and they're starting to think about what to do with this in the future in relationship to leases that are coming up. Some of the owners of the property are concerned that the leases are very short, and they can't make plans, and so they're coming up with some longer leases that will come up at a specific period of time where these will be points to consider what's going to happen in the future. So it does seem like it's starting to pay for itself, and that there will be some thoughts about what the long-term goal of that property is in relationship to the town, developing it either for park, public buildings, whatever. So that was the thing that was most relevant, I think, from the meeting. The other thing that was interesting, Todd.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
That was.
So
Park,
where is it?
No. So I know Corte Madera and the history of it. My question is, what is the vehicle in which they will discuss that?
Planning Department was the vehicle that's going to discuss that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
report.
not so much the Planning
Congratulations.
Commission, but the
See, I
planning.
missed one meeting.
Planning Department, yeah. So that was the discussion at that point, but it'll be a huge public outreach, for what the public wants, what we want to do there.
Where the gas
A lot
station
of
is?
probably different thoughts,
Yeah,
and
Cafe
the
Verde.
thoughts that some people have now may change. I mean, this is probably this is at least 5 years down the road, I would think. Yes.
How many more years are they going to be paying for it? Is the loan?
I can't remember now, but it was like 20 years out, I think.
It is that long.
Yeah, for the loan.
Yes.
They had refinanced
Well, I
it
know they
for
refinanced.
favorable terms, but I think it was still in the 20-year
Okay.
range.
Be-
But they are at least in the black at this
Yeah,
point.
because of the income they're getting from the rentals
Yes.
of the store. And I'm wondering what they can do, because one of the ideas was to expand the park or put another building on it. And I'm thinking they really can't do anything. They need that income.
Let's, yeah.
Yeah,
this
that's
isn't
why I'm
an
wondering
item
what
to-
their timeline was.
And I think the goal was to extend the leases for the current owners there, so they can make some plans
Why don't
about
I'll discuss
remodeling it
with
up
the
there.
town manager exactly, get a report back from him on
Okay.
how this was going to be discussed at the planning department or planning commission in the
It's,
future.
it's a long ways out.
Yeah, I know there's other,
And then it'll be preliminary, I think.
okay.
Yeah. And the other issue that Todd had brought up, he had reviewed different boards and how things were being run. And he recommended Rosenberg's rules of order. And evidently, several of the commissioners, or council members, had been involved in organizations that use that. It's much simpler. It's also much more oriented to small boards, commissions, and councils, whereas Roberts was really for much larger groups of individuals. So I think this was going to be a recommendation that he make, that all of the the council and the boards use the Rosenberg's rules, which are, really much more concise and easier to get through. Yeah.
Exactly.
The other thing that he talked about, and Peter's done a good job of doing this here, is having more of a hard stop and resisting the temptation to respond to people in 3 minutes public time, with just a brief lapse tonight. But Peter's done a good job on that. They were talking about getting a device that not only had the time on it, but would have a red, yellow, and green that would be very visible to the speaker, so that, they would hopefully wrap it up at that 3-minute mark. One of the other things that he was advocating, and I believe the council agreed to, was an earlier start. And they were trying to go for a 6:30 start. I know the flood board has gone to a 7 o'clock start for some time, but really it's dependent on the council members or the commission members being able to make that earlier start. He also felt that meetings shouldn't go over 3 hours, and that majority vote at the end of 3 hours to extend it 30 minutes, and then a unanimous vote at the end of that to extend it another 30 minutes. And so the idea would be 6:30 to 9:30 with 10:30 at the very latest. So these are continuing to be discussed, but there was general,
Right.
agreement to go along with that at the council.
And just, so my understanding is that those will need to be adopted formally by the council through ordinance, and I think and if they do that, would be the time we can have maybe a discussion and put it on the agenda here to discuss whether we take any of those recommendations or change our own procedures as a result.
Can I ask a question about it? Does each commission have the ability to change the times individually, or does it have to be the same across the board?
Well, so as you know, and I'll use this opportunity to sort of talk about, as you know, the commission just recently recommended some changes to the rules and procedures
Right.
of the planning commission rules and procedures. That is going before the council on Tuesday, and they are the ones who will finally will adopt those rules. So the commission can make a recommendation for its own rules and procedures, but ultimately that goes to the town council, and town council has to adopt that.
Has to adopt it. So if we were interested in discussing that,
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. Once the council actually adopts changes for themselves,
for themselves,
then it maybe makes sense at that time to put something on our agenda for the planning commission rules. And if we want to follow sort of what the council is doing up there,
versus doing it now, since they're gonna adopt
because
our
they haven't
new-
adopted it formally. We don't know if they have adopted those rules yet.
They're going to be rewriting their rules and
That's correct.
procedures
Okay.
and stuff like
But
that.
I guess, but part of, in our rules and procedures right now, we talk about the timing of meetings.
Yes.
So if we wanted to make changes to that.
Yes.
Wouldn't we want to suggest those changes now before they adopt the change?
No.
Well,
Because we don't know what
Let-
they are adopting.
Okay.
Right, so my suggestion is that we put something on the agenda once they have actually adopted something. Right now, they had a discussion about it, they have to do it by ordinance. Once they formally adopt it, that, I think, will set a precedent that maybe that other commissions follow, or if they choose to do so.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and I would just say, this commission just went through, as I mentioned, a revision. We had something on the agenda recently that's going before the council on August 15th. So sometime in between changes maybe makes some sense as well. So, but it will not be lost on us, don't worry.
I wouldn't believe that.
Phyllis?
Yeah, from what I was told, their rules and procedures were written in 2003, and nothing's been done to them since, so a lot of things in it, the law has changed and stuff. They're going to take some time to rewrite their rules and procedures and get them updated. It's not something that'll be done in a meeting or two.
Gotcha. I guess the part that, sorry, I'm being really dense about this right now, so I can ask you offline.
Okay.
Yeah, we can discuss.
All right. So Bob, anything else about that meeting? Okay, so that would be that. And anybody else have anything they want to report on? No? Okay. Dr. Director.
Dr. Trey. Nice. No, I don't have, I was going to mention the rules and procedures going to the town council next week. We are also going to be discussing in a workshop setting the town's approach towards regulating or potentially regulating, how to regulate cannabis, adult use and recreational use and medical. So that's going to be a workshop setting. Maybe if you're interested in that, you may want to attend just to hear the council's discussion on that. As likely, some of that may come back to the commission in some form to discuss and
We had
deliberate
that
on that issue as
before.
well. So just a heads up on that. And I don't have any other items to report on at this particular time, unless I'm forgetting something. Phil, do you have anything on you want to? I think we're good. So that would be it for my report at this time. Right. I mean, we can move into the tentative agenda items for the 22nd. We have an appeal of a staff decision to grant a design review approval for a fence. So that's, as you see, it's on the tentative agenda. 6 feet is allowed by code, and they're proposing a 7-foot fence. And so that will be on the agenda. We were also not on the agenda, but I think Judith and I will be having something on the agenda as a discussion item related to findings and just discussing general overview of the concept of findings. And I think this was sort of in response to a commission request to have an ability to discuss the role that findings play in decision making. And so therefore, I think it's with the new commissioner member, it may be a good time to do that as well and remind us all
Peter,
of those.
That would be greatly appreciated.
since I'm the commissioner who had asked for that, I would like more than just a general discussion of findings. I would like an explanation of what each of these findings mean, because they are rather amorphous.
That's fine.
I think that has to be part of it. Not only what we're supposed to do with findings, but what exactly are we asking for with the wording that is current?
Okay. And at this point, those are the items that I think we know are on, we want to have on the agenda, and maybe there's room for more to discuss some other discussion items. So with that, though, that concludes my report.
Okay, so there are other things out there, if I may ask, on the likely return of the budget in, month, you don't know?
No.
Okay.
Don't know.
What about
If
the
there are
other
reports
hotel?
that you would like me to comment on, or then I'd be happy to sort of put those on the next agenda or discuss offline.
What do you mean reports?
Project status.
Yeah,
project
the next agenda,
Right, okay,
the next commission meeting. Otherwise, I'm happy to discuss offline.
okay. All right, thank you. So, that gets us right up to where we have to talk about minutes. So, we have minutes for July 11th.
I have an amendment to that. I think it's July 11th. Yes.
You have some changes to
Yes, on page 5, the paragraph where you say Vice Chair Metcalf submitted a letter for the record. I didn't submit a letter, I read a statement. And the rest of it is fine.
Um, The public comments aren't in bold.
Excuse me?
The public comments that were so vociferous are not in bold.
Yes.
Very diplomatic.
Underlined.
Okay, so with that said, anybody else have any other changes to those notes?
Are we doing just the 11th now?
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
okay, just, all right, I'll move the minutes of July 11th with the amendments I made.
Okay, that would have to come from, a second from Bob or,
Second.
okay.
Do you want me to should we do voice vote? All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
okay.
Motion
I
passes.
have to abstain. though, don't I?
Abstention.
You were abstained by Councilman Friedman. And then on July 25th,
Is that the one where they don't show you voting? You.
for,
Oh, one of them I was reading, it never showed your vote, it shows everybody else but you. I'm trying to remember where it was. Maybe it was on the 11th.
so with regard to July 25th, are there any,
Well, that's, it might have been on the 11th.
Yes, page 3, Commissioner Bundy discussed his dislike of the freestanding sign, and Mr. Mora stated it could be removed. That was actually the owner, Sam Darbar, said that we could do away with that. And then, let me defer to Jennifer on page 4. Commissioner Friedman said she would not support a recommendation to raise a building for economic reasons. Was that your statement?
I said I thought that it was like an undue economic hardship to ask
Okay.
them to raise the building, so. I don't know, Judith, do you think that that's a problematic comment to state it in that way? For economic reasons, or should I state it
No,
a
I
little
think
bit
that
differently?
expresses it
Okay.
accurately.
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Excuse me? No, none. Everyone's there.
all right, well, that makes short work of a meeting, so,
Can I just bring up the online calendar for civic events that are,
Can we we can
You have to
have a.
adjourn first.
we have to
I
adjourn.
can-
Let's get out of the
okay.
meeting. So motion to adjourn from anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Adjourned. You can go home now.